Welcome to Founders Unplugged, hosted by Greg McCallum. Long-form, honest conversations with founders and entrepreneurs from around the world.
I am Xander. I'm head of business development at Wild Vision. I'm also an angel investor, and I've been working for Wild Vision for just over 3 years now, where we are a content syndication agency, simply repurposing creators' content from YouTube for other platforms like Facebook, Snapchat, OTT, airlines, TikTok, you name it. Wherever there's a screen, we'll be distributing content there, generating new sources of passive revenue, as well as generating new marketing funnels for followers, expanding your brand, and just being an extension of creators' team. So it's been an interesting journey so far. Really excited to carry on and obviously find new sources of revenue, new sources of marketing funnels for our creators on board, and just continue growing.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. So yeah, man, it's great to see you. Great to have you on the show. And I'm interested to find out a bit more about you and kind of there was a reason why I wanted you on the show, after all. So yeah, I find what you do to be quite interesting, both with Wild Vision, your journey sort of coming up to getting into this, and then also the bit of angel investing that you do as well. So yeah, I appreciate you coming on. It's hopefully going to be interesting. One thing in particular that I think is I'd like you to sort of tell me a bit more about to start off with. Then is obviously working with creators and stuff like that. That's what you do now in business development. But what was your career path like, going towards business development? Had you done business development type stuff before, or is this fairly new for you? Like, talk us through that. What was the journey into that career path?
Currently it's a bit more of a transitioning stage right now. I first joined Wild Vision as a sales executive, and before that, I was actually at another company as a sales executive there, working with creators. But I feel like we kind of need to go a little bit back in terms of what even got me into the creator economy in the first place. Yeah. So when I went to uni, I knew that I had to do a work placement year, because if you're just coming out of uni with a degree, you're going to be competing with everyone else. So you need to set yourself apart from the competition. That's why I did a work placement. I threw really good parties for my mates, and I thought, okay, I'll just go into events because that's really fun and I enjoy it. Went into events, did that for a year, never doing events again in my life. But what the events actually led me to do was organize events for the creator economy. And at that point, it was just scratching the surface. So it was your classic influencer marketing. It was brands partnering with influencers and then creating a campaign out of it. So we were throwing events for them, doing awards, doing conferences, and I thought that this was a really cool industry and a really nice space. And I really, really, really wanted to be a part of that, essentially. And I kept in touch with quite a few people there, working for free for a bunch of people, just because I knew that as soon as I got my foot through the door, I could then show what I could do and level up from there. Stayed in touch, worked for free whilst I was at uni, went back to uni for my final year, then got offered either doing another work placement module on my degree or doing something like food, culture and society, weighing up two different options of food, culture and society, where you're writing 2 4,000-word essays, or a work placement module where you work for 2 weeks and you write a reflective essay on what you've done in a work diary. So I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. Hit up my connections, got introduced to my current boss now, and then worked for them. Just another thing to add to the CV. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got given, and something probably for younger generations when they're doing their dissertations, was to interview people and obviously make your dissertation around the industry that you want to go into. So I did my dissertation on how influential AI influencers were on your purchasing decisions and habits. So this was 2020. So 2020, 21, 2021.
How influential AI
influencers.
Influencers.
AI influencers. So
Oh,
AI
okay, right.
influencers has only
So it
been
was
like,
still within the creator economy. You're right.
yeah,
Are on your purchasing decision. So like AI YouTubers and stuff like that. So people reviewing
yeah.
AI products potentially, or something like that.
Well, not AI products, like AI influencers themselves. So they're
Oh,
just
right, as in AI.
yeah,
Okay, like
yeah. So
non-real
like you go
human
on
beings,
Instagram
right?
and you've got
Yeah. I'm with you.
someone that's not real.
Yeah. I was going to say because around then I didn't that there weren't as many of those types of influencers
No
around
way.
yet.
Yeah.
Of people talking about AI products. But yeah, no, I get that. That okay, interesting. Yeah.
And then I interviewed people that were in the industry, and I wanted to get to know them on a different level, ask their expertise. And I only interviewed 5 people there, so and as well as my family and friends for the wider case study.
Sure.
And research. Yeah, that definitely put me put me in good connections with people, because now my current boss is one of the people that I interviewed, and now we get along like a house on fire, and have grown this agency from something very small based in Bournemouth in the UK to a global agency where we've got offices in Australia, Serbia, UK, and we've got some people in LA as well. So
Nice.
that's kind of the lead up to it. And at that point, I was just a salesperson, joined up, moved from Kent, and then continued to the whole market was there, ready, available. So was lots of late night calls, lots of hard work to get to where I think we're managing over 600 creators across multiple platforms now. Mm-hmm. So lots of different sources of revenue coming in for the creators, for us, everyone involved.
It's awesome. So what is it about the creator economy that interested you so much? Because I mean, on the face of it, if you look at it as an industry, that a lot of people, I was actually made a post about this recently, that I find that most investors, it was talking about how angel investors especially really don't understand the creator economy. And it's a huge problem, I think, because there are a lot of really interesting startups working in that space, really interesting businesses working in that space, and they can't get funding, and they need to force themselves to bootstrap, which can be very, very difficult unless you have inroads into that space. But there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. But then equally, on the other side, if you're looking at it from the outside, you might just think it's incredibly vacuous and incredibly, nonsensical, and there's not really much going on. So what is it from your perspective that makes it a really interesting space?
I mean, when I was first introduced to it, it was very much now and up and coming. It was, I physically cannot put a finger on it as to what it was that drew me in, but I just felt everything, that it was like, this is the place to be. I guess you could say it is the new form of Hollywood. It's the new mainstream media that is coming through. You're now getting younger generations, 80 to 90% of them wanting to become YouTubers rather than your traditional doctors, lawyers, astronauts, whatever you want. They're all just wanting to become YouTubers. And I think as well, creating a life that is suited to you just by being yourself, sharing content with the world, and like educating people or entertaining people, and managing it all within your own schedule. I think that is a massive appeal for obviously creators to live that life. And I think there's just a lot of infrastructures that need to be in place to help support those creators, because as you probably know, everyone knows, you can't do everything by yourself. So that's why it's very important to be partnering up with the right teams, the right agencies, the right creators. Everyone needs to have some support, a really good support network around them. And that's what I love about Wild Vision as well, is the fact that we do become an extension of their team, and we have done some amazing things with the creators. We've got a client of mine, Rocks and Rolls Candy in the Netherlands, who's just a small boutique sweet shop in the pretty much middle of nowhere. And and we started with their YouTube channel. They were on like 23k subscribers. They're now over 5 million. That's over just a year. And we've brought in a lot more traffic to their shop. So profits going up there. We've also brought them in new revenue streams. So YouTube, we got that monetized. Facebook, they were on about 13k followers on there. They're now over 2 million on that platform. And what else we've been doing, that working with them on OTT. We're looking at getting them onto airlines. There's loads of different possibilities for them. And the fact that it's a business first is something that's really interesting to me. And I think the creator economy as a whole, we've gone from a wave of people starting passion projects and doing things because, you know, they just love it and they just want to spend all their time doing that, to now where people are thinking strategically, this is actually a business. I need to build almost a media empire or a media business to then scale that. Or you have a business and then you're using social media to help grow that business in a marketing model and also get new revenue streams in. So there's so many different ways you can approach the creator economy, and it's a $250 billion industry. So why would you not be taking a chance and trying to get involved a little bit more?
It's an interesting point, because I think a lot of people, when they think of the creator economy, they think of influencers. They don't automatically think of business owners, right? Which is surprising, because if that is what I mean. And also I think when a lot of people think about wanting to become a creator or an influencer, they don't think about it as being a business owner initially. Like, you know, especially the younger kids these days. I've had to have that conversation with my son, who's 9 years old, talking about, you know, YouTube or streaming or whatever, and I've had to sit down and explain to him what that really means. I'm like, it's hard work. You know, you want to be streaming like pretty much all day, and then, you know, editing your own clips and this, that, and the other. I'm like, that's what it's like. You know, it's like if you're prepared to do that, cool. But then you've got a few things to learn. You know, and that's the stuff that we're not maybe being honest and teaching our kids about. But anyway, but yeah, so there's a bit of a misconception there, I think, about, you know, going back to my point about angel investors, especially when they were talking about that, and the ones I've talked to, they just fundamentally misunderstand it, and I think the general public too. Right, just fundamentally misunderstand the creator economy, and they just see it as either it's sort of pretty ladies taking, you know, suggestive pics, or, you know, absolute idiot men, you know, with their tops off, you know, talking about cars. Like, it's a lot more complex and nuanced than that. I mean, there are those people too, but but it is more complex than that, right? Like you said, and specifically those sort of two main categories, I guess you pointed out, which is someone who's turning their influencing into a business versus someone who's got a business and using the creator economy to promote that. I guess so. Yeah.
I think a lot of people still to this day. I thought we'd be moving past this, but as a society, we're clearly not. I think a lot of people see influencers, and bearing in mind, I don't hear the word influencer much at all within my work day, within my work week. Like, influencers and creators are very different. Influencers was the first wave, creators are now the second wave, and then we're going to get into way more. It's more all about community.
Hi, a friendly reminder to share this episode with your network, like, and subscribe. And if you are feeling really supportive, please consider reviewing the show on the podcast platform of your choice. It all really helps support what we do. Thank you. Now back to the show.
Driven products, entertainment, loads of different layers as a creator, and the creator's not being limited to just one thing of like, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a TikToker. You are everything. You are the actor, producer, editor, every community builder. You are everything in that business for you. And influencers used to be, they got a bad rep, obviously, from all the scandals, and we're comparing that to traditional celebrities and how actually engaged you are, because you're, you know, when Chris Hemsworth is advertising Hugo Boss aftershave, just because you wear Hugo Boss doesn't mean you're gonna be looking like Chris Hemsworth or smelling like Chris Hemsworth. He probably doesn't even wear Hugo Boss, but, you know, there are a lot of different influencers that did go down this road of just, oh, I've seen money, I'm going to promote this product and not know any of the side effects of it, or even use it myself. And creators now are partnering with the right brands that they're actually passionate about, connected with, and having a genuine alliance with. So and I think as well for angel investors, it's quite tough for them to find the opportunities to invest in the creator economy, because they're not as widely available. Well, they're available, but I think as an angel, you do have to know, and if especially your first time investing into a company, you do have to know the founder, or you have to know the opportunity inside and out. And I don't think you get that until you're in the right room. So you're not, so you're going to the events, you're going to your VidCons, your Vid Summits, going to Cannes, you do have to put some money behind you to put yourself in the right situations, meet the right people. The company I invested in, where I met the founder 2.5 years ago at a bar at VidCon, and it's only to about this year when his product was ready to fully launch. Like, we just stayed in touch, and I was like, I really like this idea. I like you as a founder. I think you're a great guy. And now we're getting to a point where, a lot of other people have seen that. I just got the chance to meet him, chat to him, and pick his brain and see what his missions and his goals were. I think, especially when you're giving up a lump sum of money, or investing in lump sum of money, you do need to have like full confidence within yourself, within the founder, and within the company's structure to fully make that jump.
Yeah, and I would go a step further as well and add to that, which is, I think that a lot of investors just sort of take the approach of, oh well, I don't get that space, so I'm just gonna leave it. You know what I mean? It's they don't even take the time to want to understand it. It's like, oh, it's a different generation. I don't get it. I know that it makes money. I know that it's probably, it's a great industry and a great sector, but it's just, I'm gonna stay away from it, which is really bizarre because of any other sector, and they'll say, oh, I'll research it, But for some reason, the creator economy just scares them. They think that they're aged out of it, even if they're in the right generation for it, which is weird. I speak to people in their 30s. I'm like, you're in the right generation, man. Like, you should know about this. Like, we're the same age. And for some reason, they're just like, no, it's fine. I'll leave that to the ones that are professional. It's odd, and I know that from first-hand experience because I've literally been leading a raise for a SaaS solution, I guess you could call it, whatever you want to call it, into the creator economy, specifically for Twitch streamers. That's a fantastic, piece of software. It's a piece of AI software that's amazing for community building, and they're going to do some stuff with Discord too. It's incredible how it helps, especially early stage Twitch streamers in building their community and all that kind of stuff. It's incredible. And if you know even just a little bit about that, you can see the value of this product. And throughout this journey, I've been putting together an angel syndicate, and it has been incredibly painful because of the reasons I just mentioned. Like, everyone's just like, oh, right, yeah, can see the value of it, can see the size of the market, can totally understand. But it's just, it's not, I don't want to encroach on an area that I don't know too much about. And it's just like, they invest in biotech and they don't have a bioengineering degree. Do you know what I mean? It's like, they'll look into it. So it's like, just spend 10 minutes and do a bit of research. It's not that difficult,
I think with the creator economy, because social media is so volatile and can go either way all the time, but I think that's the same with all investments, really. Like, there's always that risk. But
yeah, absolutely.
Social media in particular is like, it's almost too fast for people to be coming in. And if there is, say, for example, there is this software or there is this new platform, or the life cycle of creators, we never know how long that is. Life cycle of platforms, we never know how long that is. Algorithms, don't know. Softwares, don't know. It's constantly moving. Like, you could be great today and gone tomorrow. I think that is probably why a lot of people have a lot of skepticism about it. But with that being said, you kind of have to be in it to win it. And obviously, I think being in the industry, you just see the opportunities a lot clearer. And
well, that's it. And in the end, for the syndicate, all of those that ended up getting involved in the Angel Syndicate were content creators themselves. So it just goes to show, like, you need to be in it, I think, to really understand the value of something sometimes. Yeah, it's super interesting, man. How misunderstood this area is. So then you I wanted to ask really briefly as well about what you mentioned about your dissertation. I think that's really interesting because I remember seeing a couple of years ago, or a few years back now, a lot of discussion around AI influencers or content creators, and it's not actually been as prevalent as I thought it was going to be. By now, even the sort of augmented or what do they call them, like VTubers and stuff like that. There was a lot of talk around that becoming really, really prevalent, and there are a few that are pretty big. But again, I was expecting that to be a tsunami kind of content creators like that, and it still doesn't seem to be the case. So why do you think that is? Is it just that the technology is not there, or is it just doesn't resonate with people? Why are we not seeing that take over as much?
I think it's different. I think it's probably more prevalent now. Some people just don't realize it.
Oh, okay. So it's that good.
I think it's the blurred line now. I'm pretty sure that there's well, you've obviously got your Instagram influencers. There's also AI OnlyFans models. So that's a whole new thing, and people are falling for that. And with the VTubers, I haven't seen much traction. I think faceless channels,
that's been around for a long time.
It's been around for a while, but in terms of like AI systems coming in, like you are essentially having an AI creator or an AI business.
I can always tell. I don't know about you. I can always tell because I watch a lot of YouTube. And and then there's just something about the voice, like it's that's not. I'm just like, this feels off, and it immediately just puts me off watching the video because it's distracting. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of true crime ones, for example, and it's just like, oh, this feels odd. This feels off, and then you can just feel it because there's not a warmth in the voice
as well.
Usually because the scripts are usually AI generated too.
But we're only at the start, and you can look at, even if we were looking at AI content from a year ago to compare to where it is now, you can clearly see that there is a trajectory. It is improving constantly. It is moving fast. We are going to be getting to a point where it's almost indistinguishable. We're probably going to have AIs to tell us whether this is AI or not. That's the scary thing about it. But I haven't seen a properly good AI influencer, creator, or VTuber be incredibly successful. I think that there are cases out there. I mean, you look at Blue, BLOO, like that's still bigger than quite a few other YouTubers.
Is that the guy that uses an alien type avatar?
Yeah, so I think he started out as like blue hair, and then it's obviously like it's an avatar. So it's preventing creator fatigue,
right?
Like that, constantly having to put yourself out there, and constantly having to put in the effort. Whereas you can then just sit down, do an hour of recording, half an hour, and then move on, do something else. I think that's the struggle that a lot of creators do have. And
there's an anonymity aspect to it too, which I think is quite important that isn't really talked about enough. But there's, especially for female content creators, it can become quite an issue, to have their real identity out there and people finding out, personal information on them because of, the fandom can, get to quite a toxic place, especially in certain verticals of the content the creator space. And so I can totally see the appeal as to why people might want to keep their identity hidden. In the biggest possible way, whether that's true, and that's I think usually why we saw the rise of faceless content creators, especially around like the Minecraft scene and all that sort of stuff initially, didn't we? And then now later, sort of a bit more everywhere. But then this is kind of another way, I suppose, of doing that. Through using like virtual avatars or even I know a lot of the tools out there even allow you to create avatars that not necessarily like high tech, but
I actually, having this conversation, it sparked me to finding someone that we were in talks with a long time ago, a YouTuber called Filian. Filian. Yeah, she's on almost 3 million subscribers. No one knows who she is. She's got an amazing community. They all love her, and she's dressed up. Her virtual YouTube is an anime character. So,
right,
to be driving that much engagement, that many views, that's you know, that to me is success for her, especially as, you know, no one knows
Yes,
who she
I'm
is,
familiar
where
with
she,
that one. I've seen some
you
of her
know,
TikToks.
there is
Yeah.
a lot more opportunity for creators and people to do that, where it's like you're just you know, it's your personality that's out there and not your looks, and you're not getting, you know, you can walk the streets and not get hounded, or be in any potential danger, or expose yourself to the negativity that can come from putting yourself out onto the internet. And I think she's done a very smart thing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple I've seen like that have, and they can be really funny as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because obviously there's some stuff that you can do with a virtual avatar that you can't do in real life, and that can make for some really interesting and quite funny content. And it's not easy. I mean, it's a quite technically complex thing to do. At least it used to be. I don't know. I'm sure the tools are making it easier and easier, but like it's pretty difficult. So, you know, hats off to those that manage to figure it out too. Technically, yeah, it's
I
super
think we
interesting.
will see a lot more creators like this, especially as
Mm,
we head into, you know, an avatar-y world. If we're going down the metaverse and we're working with those with the headsets on and
mm,
having meetings with people, like, I mean, there's two different ways it can go, right? It's Meta released the glasses like a couple of weeks ago, and they're looking at the augmented reality and having that come in, but then also, you know, that they still were in the metaverse and the avatar space, so you can be whoever you want to be. It's all very Black Mirror.
yeah, but I mean, it's just like any technological advancement. It can, you know, it can go both ways. But I mean, there was part of that I found quite interesting. I'm not sure if it was Facebook. I think it may have been Apple's the Vision Pro. I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember entirely, but I remember, or maybe it may have even been Meta a while ago when they were talking about the future of their product, talking about being able to apply makeup to your virtual self in calls, because obviously you know, it looks at your eye, it does your eye tracking, it recreates your eyes in a virtual environment, so you can have calls in virtual reality by recreating a digital version of your face basically. But it can add things to your face, so that if you're feeling a little bit tired, it can make you look less tired. You can add makeup if you haven't had time to do your makeup, and so on. And that's at a point where it's like, okay, well then, you know, how far do you want to go with that? You might want to be able to create, in fact, it wouldn't be very difficult then, presumably, for a third party to create a tool that allows you to create an AI avatar in that way. And then the next thing you know, you could end up in a situation where you're hiring someone to work with you who's working remotely. The only interactions you have with them are virtual, and they present themselves as a completely different person, and you would never know until you met them in real life. And it may be that they present themselves as a different gender, as a different race, as a different whatever, you know, and that could be a really interesting like conversation to have, you know, around, you know, what are the ethics of that.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, what is it, you know, as we were already talking about, well, you know, the rights that people have of the way that they want to present themselves, that would also open up a really interesting topic there, right? Around, well, you know, it's their space, it's their opportunity to present
Their
themselves.
choice.
Is it their right to do it? Yeah. So then it's going to be really interesting around that, and then there's going to be a whole conversation about the transparency of that. So yeah, I see what you mean. There's definitely going to be a blurred line between these two things, in one way or the other. Whether it's, you know,
It's just taking, you know, I think the gaming industry will lead it for
oh yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I think everyone knows how big that is. So
Mm.
I think they'll be the ones that will be able to. That's when things will probably blur very quick and very fast.
Yeah, yeah. I think also, interestingly enough, the adult industry plays a huge part in this too.
Yeah.
And this is something that, you know, people tend to shy away from talking about, but I think it's really important. I mean, it's a fucking huge industry. I mean, OnlyFans as a business, you know, for those that don't know anything about it, I strongly urge you to go and understand it as a business, because
Mhm.
it's hugely interesting, especially from an angel perspective. Because of like, if you're uncertain about investing into this space, I mean, Jesus Christ, just look at that as a business. You know, considering how lean that business is and how much money they've managed to generate from a very effectively a very simple business idea, is interesting. But there's a lot that happens within the adult industry that filters down into other technologies. I've said for many years that, you know, the military industrial complex and the porn industry are like the two main driving forces behind technical innovation. Like, robotics, for example, is,
Yeah.
the main innovations coming from those areas are happening from those two industries. What is it about does that play much of a factor in the stuff that you guys do, in terms of influencers, content creators, and kind of OnlyFans? Because there is quite often a bleed between those, where content creators almost in certain areas will feel like they're obligated to create an OnlyFans or some sort of adult content in order to sort of keep ahead and connected with their fans on a different level, right?
If you are enjoying this episode and want to support the show, please like, subscribe with notifications turned on, and let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. This lets YouTube know we are doing something right. Back to the show.
Yeah, I think there's a line, right? And it's down to the creators. There's lots of other opportunities and lots of other options of platforms very similar to OnlyFans. There's membership companies that will build an app for you, and there's memberships. It just depends how far you want to go. There's two sides to this. The OnlyFans creators also use social media to help market their OnlyFans, so they'll be on like Snapstars, or they'll be posting stuff on their Instagram, TikTok, anything and everything. They'll all be driving people over to just see that if they have an OnlyFans link, or and continue down that road. And then you've got the other side of it, where you've got attractive people, or just like creators themselves, who are building a community and still want to do part of what the OnlyFans models do in terms of messaging, pay to receive photos, live streams, pay to live stream. There's so many different ways of doing that. And then with the companies that are out there now that are offering this service, they will not allow any explicit content on the platform. It can be completely different, and obviously just be focused on what the community actually is, and people still wanting to message and still wanting to engage. I think ultimately it is boiled down to the relationships that you have with your community. It's just whether it's going to be a more sexual one, or more, authentic and a shared interest there. I think there's very different, there's lots of different layers to it. There's lots of different varieties of how it's done, but there is still the basic principles of someone wanting to pay for your time, for your attention, for your validation, essentially. So there's still this, I've never really wanted to pay for that. That's not something it's been of interest of mine. It's more about building your own thing. But yeah, it's a very interesting world, and there are people who love the creators so much that they will spend a lot of money just to spend some more time with them and feel that they're actually engaged and have a genuine relationship with them, and are just so grateful that they exist because they've taught them so much, or there's loads of good positive things that can be taken out of it.
It's difficult, isn't it? It's, just like with anything in the world, it's always very nuanced. And like, the adult industry, the sex industry, whatever you want to call it, especially is always one that's been really complicated. I mean, if you go back to the very beginnings of it, right? There's always been a conversation around, is this healthy for society or not? And then inevitably the conversation comes up around the fact that, well, yes, it is for a very select few people within society that aren't able to find that connection in any other way. That this serves a really important purpose. It provides meaning and all that. There's that, but then there's obviously the more dangerous side, like we talked about with some content creators wanting to keep their anonymity. It's like, this is the extreme version of not keeping your anonymity and really leading people on into believing there is a relationship. That's the point of it sometimes, especially with those that do streams and stuff as well, like adult streams. So it's a bit of a minefield, isn't it? As to what, whether it's good or bad. I think one thing that I think concerns a lot of people, and I've thought about a lot as well, is that the fact that now it's so easy to become an adult content creator. It's made that decision-making process a lot quicker for deciding to do it. And so now, unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of young women, especially, coming out of that after being in it for a very short period of time, really regretting having made that rash decision into doing it really young, like, turning 18, 19 or so, and then going crap. And then, of course, as we all know about the internet, it's forever. So, it's very difficult to scrub that from your life. So, yeah, it's interesting. But I know OnlyFans are also, they're not just for adult content. I mean, that's not,
No,
I don't believe that's why they were originally created either, was it?
no,
From what I
I think it's
understand.
just kind of as a tool, as a platform.
Yeah, like a community tool, like you mentioned, for extra content and all that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so you have your Patreons and a brand army and everything else that's like offering extra content subscriptions. It's all content.
Their rules were just a lot more relaxed than most, I think, and that's
Yeah,
kind of where a lot of adult content creators sort of took advantage of that, and then it kind of became its own thing, really, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, it's not going to be, well, I mean, there's loads of other models of OnlyFans as like platforms as well. So there's, as you look at social media platforms across the board, there's replicas, there's still the same sort of things, but just at a different branding and a different light. But yeah, it's a strange world now for sure, and I think it's an interesting space to see where it goes.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely. And in that respect, I can kind of understand when the people I speak to go, when I spoke to those investors, and they were like, "Do you know what? I'm not 100%," because it is a massive rabbit hole, and it can feel like you just, you're tumbling down it forever. But
yeah, I think there's also a lot of like moral objections with it as well. I think investing is something that, if you're investing in something, you want to morally believe in it as well.
Right.
And I think, if you're actively funding, I mean, like we said, OnlyFans isn't just the adult industry, but primarily is, let's be real. And if you're investing in that, then you're like, are you investing in that for society and help the wider picture, really?
Right, and investors do generally sort of think about legacy and how they're investing into things that have societal impacts, right? So that it's maybe sometimes hard for people to really put those two things together and think, because even if it isn't got those implications to it, then I suppose it's like, okay, well, what's the good version of that? Well, it's people making entertaining content. Is entertainment really something I want to invest in? But I think the bit that they're really missing is the point you made right at the beginning, which is that there's a lot more to it than that. There are businesses, there are actual, real legitimate businesses quite often on top of this, or people with a lot of talent, whether that's musicians or sports people or whatever. Like there's also a lot more to it that I think that doesn't get half as the attention as it should, because I think it's overshadowed by all this negativity in this space, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think as well, just going back to an earlier point in terms of like angel investors or people coming into the creator economy, over the time that I've been in the industry, especially in the past year, I've seen a massive influx in finance companies coming to creators.
All right.
And essentially, licensing backlog of content, earning AdSense revenue on that, and paying you a lump sum of cash up front to start earning revenue on the back of that. There's also new platforms where they're trying to get everyday people and investors into investing into YouTube AdSense revenue into specific channels and owning a portion of that and then earning back on that. So, you pay $70 and then after the first full 2 months, then you start earning revenue back on the YouTube AdSense revenue that you invested in. So, I mean, after a while, you'll make your money back and then you'll start just earning profit from it. And then you can also sell that sell your share within the YouTube AdSense channels. And seeing a lot of finance creators like who are educating their community on this. A lot of them do very well because they're then telling their audience that this is actually a really good opportunity. They sell out, they can raise millions within a day. And then, the creators themselves are making a lot of money. The creators community, when they're buying into it and knowing that the creator that they've formed this relationship with online is actively doing their best to help their community, which is the whole reason why they are where they are. The community has been the driver of that. The views, the AdSense revenue, the brand deals, everything has come from them having a community. So they are actively giving back and helping them along this journey to help them get to another level, which I'm really excited to see where that goes as well. I think that's a massive opportunity for especially people who are a bit skeptical, about investing in the creator economy. That's a good way to start. There's a lot of companies out there that are doing something like this, but
that's really interesting.
But I'll do what do they call Gigastar, Gigastar. Would mention them, those guys. It's a great little platform, and just check it out, see if it's something of interest for investors. You don't have to invest a lot either.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'd not heard of that model before. Is that quite a recent thing?
Yeah, that's like a year and a bit.
Right.
So there's lots of different routes to go down.
Yeah, you mentioned as well. You've mentioned a few times the word community, which is really important, I think, as well. And then what I think a lot of people don't realize when it comes to content creators is, and a big part of the job is to build a community, right? I mean, it was to build an audience, but the way to ensure an audience remains sticky is to essentially, to turn it into a community and foster that community, right? A community usually rallied around a specific area of interest, or, that individual or whatever. How important is it, do you think, that content creators have that as a skill set to a degree of community management, of understanding how community works, what keeps them engaged? And maybe even like from a technical perspective, how to even do that in the first place. Is that an important part of it, do you think, to become a successful content creator these days?
I think you can look at it from two different levels or two different perspectives, because you can have micro influencers and their community, and that's a massively engaged community, but they're probably earning more than your macros because they've got people who are spending money monthly to then learn from them, gain value from them, and be a part of this amazing community. And then you can also look at the top level, and I don't think there's as much of a community there. It's not as engaged, or like the relationships that you can't have relationships with 1,000 people properly, authentically, fully, or you can have that, but you can't have it with millions and millions of people. So that's simply your time is spread way too thin if you're giving your 2 pence to every single person.
Is that the difference, I suppose, the subtle difference between audience, community, and fans?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So you might have some nested within that, but ultimately it's going to be incredibly messy and hard to discern which is which, right?
Exactly. And I think the tech that's coming in to help creators provide extra value, obviously AI's got a big part to play in that. We're seeing that Meta was experimenting with that a little bit, trying to, their Mr. Beasts, Tom Brady, etc. And I don't think it took off as well as they thought it would. I think they've pulled back from that now. And I think creators can use it in a good way, in an authentic way. It's just setting up those systems, because you can capitalize a lot more with memberships, courses, and general advice. There's also I think I didn't see a while ago, it was an AI girlfriend. There was
oh yeah, that's huge at the moment.
That's huge. Yeah. So people are actually would rather, they know it's a real person, but it's not actually them sending voice notes, etc. It's crazy. But yeah, the tech is definitely getting a lot better.
Yeah, it's interesting though around that community thing, because like I mentioned, this startup that I've invested in and been forming an angel syndicate around. This is one of the main sort of problems that things they're looking to assist with is the building of community and the management of that community. And we were having a conversation yesterday, as we do often every week, and we were talking about, their platform working with big Twitch streamers versus small Twitch streamers. And they kind of mentioned a similar thing you mentioned there, which is they were saying, look, our product doesn't, really work as well once you start getting into the tens of thousands of, users because, those viewing a stream, because at the end of the day, it's just a mess, right? And this AI solution, engages in conversation, and it kind of helps with that, facilitating that conversation. And once you've got just a sea of comments in a thing, people aren't there to have a conversation. That they said that they described it to me as really what an audience is attempting to do then is just get the attention of the streamer at that point. That's all they're doing, because it's just a sea of comments of people trolling or whatever else it might be. It's just noise, and so a tool just loses its efficiency there in terms of community, and they don't really have a community in that chat, because that's not what it's about at that point. Whereas the smaller content creators, there's an actual conversation happening. Everyone's chiming into that same conversation. And that's where community can be formed. I find that really interesting. And it kind of made me think, it's a shame that really within platforms like Twitch, there aren't more tools to facilitate that, where there are maybe not different chat rooms for different topics and a more general chat. But I said, so for bigger content creators, there's a way of still being able to leverage a community without having to rely on always going to something like Discord to start managing that. But there can be that conversation live on their platform. I feel like they're missing a bit of a trick there in some ways.
Yeah, I think it's hard for platforms, especially to, like, a lot of them do innovate, but I think there's once something works, it's trying to not break it and not being with the times. I'm not sure Twitch is like the most innovative platform compared to your YouTube's. Obviously, that's something that's massively focused on creators and how else they can go more global and be even more efficient, or even go into sort of a Netflix layout as well. Like there is a massive shift in that space. But I think Twitch is missing a trick there as well.
Yeah, super interesting stuff. Okay, well, look, let's wrap up part one. Cool. And so for those listening and watching, you're going to have to come back in a couple of days to catch part two with Xander. And I want to talk a little bit more about business development as a whole, because I think that's super interesting for people who, a lot of the audience members that I have, my community, whatever you want to call it, are business owners, and a lot of them need to understand how to execute that as a skill, but also working with influencers or content creators. I get that question a lot, so we'll talk about that in part two. So that's the end of part one.
Thank you for listening and or watching. Subscribe with notifications turned on to get notified when part two comes out. While you wait, please join in the conversation in the comments below.